Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Cummings,
And I'm Julia Cummings.
and we're back for another edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast. And we wanted to come to you. We're coming from a Christian perspective,
Yep.
and we actually wanted to focus in on the spiritual side here, right?
Yeah.
And things I happen to be going through. I'm a big fan of the YouVersion Bible app, and I love reading different Bible plans from different authors who are smarter than me, who've been out there doing it longer than I have, and I don't want to read the things that they've done. But the one I came across, I thought, hey, this would be really good because every day that I did it, I thought we need to put our listeners on that. And the Bible plan, if you use the YouVersion Bible plan, is called Prayers of Blessing over my adult children. So there it is. If you're watching YouTube, it's called Prayers of Blessing over my adult children, and it's written by Bruce Wilkinson and things. And as I went through each day, I went, hey, he's got some good things to say, and we could probably share some of this with our audience today. So your thoughts on that as we get started?
It was really good. I only read the first day, so I have not read that. I'm not as much a huge YouVersion fan as Steve is. I operate differently. So I'm very much more like wing it, which we do a lot here.
We turn the mics and we wing.
Yes, because otherwise what happens, and some of you can relate to this, is if I start feeling nervous about something, if I've been told you need to say this, then I start feeling nervous and I will absolutely get tongue-tied and forget what I am supposed to say and whatever else. So it's just better if we have conversations. And the whole point of this podcast was to reach out to an audience that's like us, and to actually kind of feel like you are having a conversation with us, to feel like we're in this together, we're going through the same thing, you're not alone type of thing. So the thing that struck me about this particular thing is it Bruce Wilkinson or Wilkinson?
Yes.
So it's one of those.
The famous author and pastor, Bruce. I think it's Wilkinson.
Okay, and I thought it was Wilkinson.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Yeah, we don't know if it's Ian or ER.
Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, I was left with some questions, just, wondering how many of us are left oftentimes feeling discouraged, disparaging, depressed over our relationships with our adult children.
And may I throw out there guilty?
And guilty. I was going to get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But feeling like we've done everything we can to make this right, to make it better. And in some instances, you're probably very successful, and in other instances, you're not. And so all of those emotions come with that, and you start really questioning yourself. So one of the end results of that, what you're talking about, is feeling guilty, and really struggling with, what did I do wrong? Where did I mess up? What do I need to make right again?
And I would also throw out there, if I would have done then this would have been different. And so those if-then statements are lies.
Yeah.
That is Satan just whispering in your ear. And things. And
so I just want to cover, I just wanted to say, in the midst of this, and this isn't to let you off the hook for things that you have done wrong necessarily. We talk a lot about owning your stuff. So that piece is important. But remember the world that we live in. The world we live in has been taken over by a lot of bad actors on the internet. There's a lot of internet influence. There is a lot of social media influence and a lot of lies. And I think the enemy's overall purpose is very much to lead people astray and to destroy the family.
Well, and I think what undermines that too is this next generation as we've been watching in our world, not the next generation, but let's blame somebody for what's happening.
Yeah, that's not unique to any one generation. We see it throughout generations, but it is more of an ongoing theme that you see everywhere these days. I think I mentioned that last week. We're talking about, or at some point I was talking about Survivor, and I'm a big Survivor fan. And, they'll start in telling someone's story and the music starts playing. And, you don't get on Survivor unless you got a sob story of some sort. So Um, that's just very telling about our society right now. So all that to say, please remember the reality of life right
Right.
now, the reality that we're dealing with, and excuse me, and just letting yourself off the hook a little
Right.
bit.
Well, and here's what I think may help that Bruce uses in, I think that first day or two on that devotional. And we're not going to, we might go and like read a little section, but and this is something that I learned. I think we've always talked about since we started this podcast, we talk about, hey, when you reach 18, quote unquote, you're an adult.
Right.
You get to go vote. 16 is a driver's license, 18 you vote, 21 you drink.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's kind of, it's like, okay. And so it's like, where is this age of accountability come in? And one thing that Bruce said, and he pointed to it, comes out of Numbers chapter 14. And I do want to read that verse, but let me explain the situation. The children of Israel have been wandering the deserts. And so Caleb and Joshua and the other leaders of the other 10 tribes of Judah, they get to go up and declare, here's the promised land. And of course, I'm a Joshua Caleb fan. I'm going, yeah, let's go, and the other 10 are like, they go back into the boardroom and they vote. And the other 10 are going, oh no, it's all scary. We can't go. Well, God gets kind of upset with them. And he says, when he's in Numbers 14, he's talking to them saying, you're going to wander around for the next 40 years. This generation is going to die out. And in that, when you get to chapter 14, verse 28, he says, so tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very thing I heard you say. In this wilderness, your bodies will fall, every one of you. Here's the number. This is God's number according to Bruce and some others, and it makes sense. In this wilderness, your bodies will fail, every one of you 20 years old or more who is counted in the census, and who has grumbled against me. So when they reach the age of 20, we are no longer accountable to them. God's looking at them going, you're an adult. You now know right from wrong. Your parents have taught you. From this point forward, we as parents are not responsible for any immoral decisions they make. And when you look at the Bible, you read about Eli, you read about Samuel. I mean, these were devout men. They were priests. They were prophets. They did amazing work, and yet they had very wicked children, as well as you go through all the kings of Judah. I mean, how many times do you read that this king was good, but then all of a sudden here comes a line of wicked kings? So it's like we keep beating ourselves up, and this is where that surrender piece comes in. And maybe we blame ourselves. Maybe it's like, again, if you find yourself going into an if we'd only lived here, if I had not gone to work full time, if he'd gone to a different school, if, then, and you fill in the blank. If you get stuck in that cycle, you are just creating more and more grief for you and going through a lot of pain that you don't really necessarily have to.
Right. Guilt doesn't usually play out well for anyone, and it's not going to remedy the situation for you.
No.
So it just makes you end up feeling really lousy about yourself, and that is not what God wants. A lot of godly people have ungodly children. They are responsible for their own decisions, their own mistakes. But like you said, it's important for us to surrender and to not feel responsible for those adult decisions that they're making. Those are not our decisions.
Right.
They are their decisions. So please hear us in that.
Well, and I would just say, take the blame off yourself. I think we as humans, I have a men's ministry, and I'm always talking to the guys one-on-one, and we expect in our minds that we are supposed to get to this point where things just work out well, and they don't. I mean, we've got all sorts of things hitting us from all sides, and I think we have a hard time forgiving ourselves. Mm-hmm. God's already forgiven us. I mean, if you're in a state of perpetual sin, and there is the Bible verses about the sins of the father get passed on to the other. So whether you're struggling, and a lot of that has to do with addiction.
Well, there are a lot of things,
but there's a lot of stuff that can go on. If you don't own it and try to stop it, yes, that can happen.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about, oh my gosh, my kids haven't, they've walked away from our faith, or it might be that they might be living together as opposed to getting married at first, whatever it is. And if we could sit back and go, I'm not to blame. I don't need to own that. They're 20 years or older. So that God's going to hold them accountable for their decisions. And I think a lot of times a lot of this goes with identity. We want to be told how wonderful our kids are.
Yeah, we do like that. I like hearing a lot about my kids.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
Boosts me.
Because it's
they
almost
are
like
amazing, aren't they?
they're amazing because look at them. It's like, you know what? But I didn't do anything for them to make those decisions and live life that way. They did that on their own. Yeah. They don't sit there and go, oh, gee, I wonder what mom and dad would do in this situation. Oh, I know. They would do this. And then they make that decision. I don't think that happens. We can help shape their character. We can help teach them right from wrong. We are definitely raising them, say, in the Christian faith. And then when they reach 20, boom, they're off.
Right. Yeah. The other piece I wanted to add on to this, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Sacred books by Gary Thomas, Sacred Marriage, but there's one called Sacred Parenting. I read it when my kids were young, and it was very helpful for me because I really glommed onto the idea that part of the relationship with my children, as well as my spouse, is for my personal growth. They teach me and they build my character. They help me work out my sanctification. And a lot is to be learned and from our relationship with our children.
So what we're saying is take the spotlight off of what you're doing to them and turn the spotlight back around on you.
Right. So if I am having a struggle with one of my kids, instead of me trying to fix it and do this and try this and blah, 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 blah. And I know we all have a tendency to do that, and that's very normal. But to go beyond that and to stop for a moment, again, surrender, relinquish,
hit the pause button,
and be able to say, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Right.
How am I supposed to grow from this? How is my relationship with the Lord going to grow from this? I'm always amazed at people who are really good at reflecting when they have gone through something so difficult. And part of them getting to the other side of that is being able to ask those difficult questions of themselves. And none of us like asking ourselves those questions, really, because then then we have to look at ourselves. We have to change something.
Yeah, and when I hear you say that, sweetie, I hear the antithesis, and this is where I work with men who have father wounds. And when you have a father, for whatever reason, is relentless about trying to teach you something, it comes across as pounding you over the head. And now, anytime the word father comes into the picture, I don't want anything to do with a religion that worships a father. Because my earthly father has done a lot of damage to me, and I want nothing of that. Whereas what I hear you saying is, when we can look at sacred parenting as such, just like sacred marriage, marriage makes you holy.
Yeah. That's the whole idea, is these relationships make us more holy.
Parenting makes you holy because you can't go into it going, I know everything, and now if you would just learn everything that I have, it's like, well, wait a minute. I grew up and we all formed a worldview to protect our hearts. And we believe lies about ourselves. And now I'm going to pass that on to my children. And depending on how severe it affects me will determine how severely it affects them, and so on and so on. If I can stop and hit the pause button and going, I need to grow from this. In fact, we keep referring back to this. I had to ask my kids for forgiveness pretty much every night when I kissed them up in the bed. All four of them, Daddy, sorry. And I was learning at that moment to become I don't like using the word better. It was my sanctification journey as a father, that, I have to own my mistakes, even with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. And as I've been able to do that, I still have relationship with my adult children. They are still coming to us and asking for our input on things. And meanwhile, we just shut up. I had one of them text me last night, hey, Dad, when are you going to get that Italian dual citizenship going? And I'm like, I don't have the money for it right now. And there's a story to that. But anyway, it's just little stuff like that that we can just have conversations with, 30 years later, because he knows my heart. He knows that I'm still learning. When you have a heart of humility.
Yeah, it goes a long way.
And you don't live out of a sphere of guilt or blame or shame. We are living in peace and freedom, or at least trying to every day, saying, Lord, what do you have to teach us today? What can we learn more? I want to learn more about my heart. And in doing so, I'm going to become a better partner.
Mhm.
And that's really what we want this to be about, is as you pray over your adult children, be looking inside yourself. You become a better partner when you can deal with these
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. So I want to encourage you, even though you may not be in the throes of parenting, I would still suggest that book, Sacred Parenting.
Sacred Parenting.
Because I still think that there's something to be learned from it. Again, the author is Gary Thomas.
We should write a book called Sacred Partnering.
Sacred Partner.
Or maybe Gary's written one.
You know what? I kind of looked to see if he had made another one like for adult children, but I didn't find that. So
yeah, that'd be interesting. What does that look like?
Yeah, Sacred Partner.
There probably is more to learn there, or just as much to learn becoming a sacred partner as a sacred parent, because there's been no handbook that I know of that says, hey, when you come back from the hospital with that little life and you put them in the car seat for the first time you take them home, here's how you be a good parent. I mean, there's tens of hundreds of thousands of books written on all that stuff from all variety of different things, but there's no owner's manual, because every human being and every parent is unique, and every marriage is unique, and everything, all those dynamics get played off of each other.
Yeah.
And you have to stop, I'm going to say it again, and hit the pause button and look inward.
Yeah.
Father, what are you trying to teach me so I can be a better partner?
Yeah.
I'm trying to pivot here. Maybe your adult child is trying to blame you for things.
It's highly likely, actually.
Yeah. I would just accept it. I would go, I'm so sorry. That was never my intent.
Yeah.
Here's my heart, and explain it and own it. And you're not agreeing with it, but you're just, diffusing it. It's
one of the things that I see over and over again when I'm discussing these things with people is the parent who thinks that they're always right and can't see the other side. That is just, it doesn't work, you guys. It just does not work.
Right.
So if you are that parent where you just cannot see that you might be wrong, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't find the humility to apologize, even to see someone else's side, even if you weren't wrong, your child, it's like looking at this. I think we've said this before.
She's touching the microphone in case you're listening.
I'm sorry.
So
careful. But the microphone on my side looks different than the microphone on your side. You see different buttons. You're taller. Right. I'm shorter. I'm probably more back here. You're more here. And we see this same microphone as two different things.
Right.
And that is true of human beings as well.
Right.
Something could have happened that your child looked at, and whatever message was given to them at the time in their minds, it sticks with them. That's how they see it.
And you may never have said the words, but that's what they interpreted.
Right. Exactly. Perception is reality.
Everybody's perception is their reality.
Exactly.
And when you get more information, I can say, hey, sweetie, on this side of the microphone, I have this, this, and this. And then you go, oh, wow, more information on the same thing that we're looking at.
Right.
And you go, I didn't know that.
Right. So if you are the parent who refuses to see the other side, you're in for a lonely ride, and a lot of angry adult children who will give up and just go, you know what, I can't talk to you because you're not seeing this from a different perspective.
Yeah. One of the things I want to mention that Bruce mentions in that first day devotional that we've been kind of talking about is, he says, because much of life is beyond our understanding, we cannot allow bitterness to take root when things get difficult with our adult children. Mm-hmm. Rather, we should realize that everything we face provides us with an opportunity to grow and learn, and we must choose God no matter what comes our way. Mm-hmm. We don't tend to want to do that because it's like, hey, I'm dad. You just need to listen because I'm dad. We come from this thing of authority. But really, when you think about it, I think it's the third commandment, honor thy father and mother. That's about respect. Mm-hmm. I can respect my parents, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to, be a mat and let them walk all over me and things like that, because then they're manipulating me. It's like, do not provoke your children to anger. That can't happen either.
Right.
But, if you've got if somewhere in your heart there's a lack of forgiveness, either toward yourself
or your children,
take a step back.
If you've got a root of bitterness, years and years and years ago, back when Chuck Swindoll was at the pinnacle of his career, he wrote a book about bitterness, about having a root of bitterness. And it really struck me. I was probably in my early 20s at the time. And he just had such a good perspective on what that does to you.
Oh, yeah.
And how that chokes the life out of you when
Yeah.
you have bitterness. And mind you, as a parent, your whole life has been formed from the time you were born. Your bitterness could have started back when you were 1. So the way you've raised your children, perhaps you have bitterness in the way you were raised, and that bitterness came out on your children.
Yeah.
So, again, and we go back to this again and again. If these things are true about you, go talk to somebody about it. Dig it up a little. Figure out why you are the way you are. It's okay. There are explanations for it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean that you haven't done things wrong. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you did things wrong.
Right. And I would say, even for me, I think back to, I had 2 traumatic events when I was a young child, one at 3, one at 5. I don't need to go into detail about those. And when I remembered them in my teen or adolescent or young adult years, I'm like, oh yeah, this happened, that happened. And I think I never unpacked it emotionally, what it did to me. But I think there was some type of root of bitterness in me that drove other decisions. And I would want to find things that would make me feel better about that. And it wasn't until I was like 55 that I was in some intensive counseling, and I realized the depth of what that hurt caused me. Yeah. So your adult child could be in a similar situation, totally unbeknownst to them, unbeknownst to you. And that can be going on. And we just want to come here today on the Parent Pivot podcast to help you pivot well to the partner and take a step back and start looking at this from a spiritual angle, releasing yourself from guilt, releasing yourself from any bitterness or blame, and actually to get a copy of Bruce's book, Prayers of Blessing Over My Adult Children. We'll put a link in the show notes about that, as well as Sacred Parenting.
Yeah.
And then we'll get started writing right away the one on sacred partnering.
Yeah, we'll get on top of that.
What else do you have?
That's it. That is all I've got today.
If you have any thoughts or questions about that, or maybe there's something going on in your life with your adult kids, we want to come alongside and help. We keep mentioning it on each of the podcasts. And so we want to do some relationship coaching. I'll put that down in the show notes, but we want to, for all of you podcast listeners, we know what it costs to go do that. We want to cut that in half for you, and we'll put the details in the show notes so you can do that. Contact us via email at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah. And we're also on social media as well as YouTube at Parent Pivot Podcast.
Go and like us and share us, please, on social media.
Yes. And then be with us next Tuesday again when we're going to come back with some more parent pivoting podcasting content. See you later.
Bye.